In the growing whistleblower support ecosystem, Peter came across this story about a company called Lioness that we're going to talk about on today's Not So Critical Update.
So yes, I came across this company called Lioness, and they're kind of like a whistleblower community. And this is these couple of ladies who've started. I think they do investigations into stories about people who've been mistreated in the workplace and that kind of thing. And they have this side of it, which is like telling some of these stories as a kind of promotional vehicle for them. They don't do any SEO ads, Google ads, or anything like this, and they're kind of like, the a sort of secret type thing. Not really, really secret, because obviously they have a public website. So I came across this, and I thought, wow, this is really cool. They're blowing the whistle on some really shitty people in high tech companies and telling stories that won't get heard otherwise, and doing a good thing for the internet overall. And I was quite excited about it. And then I read one of the stories, which was about Deepak Chopra, who's a kind of spiritual leader. This is the one, yeah, thank you. And when I read it, I was kind of shocked because, I'd only ever heard of Deepak Chopra as being a good guy who helps people out. Perhaps not in the way that, everybody would like standard means. He's a spiritual guy, and he's got his recovery centers and things. But the story is all about somebody who went there with some suffering from severe addiction, and how he helped her through this time, and then he slowly kind of basically started abusing his position until the point where she was really being used as a kind of almost a concubine. It was a pretty harrowing story to read. And my reaction was, holy shit, this is crazy, this is terrible. And we discussed it. But then a friend of mine said, I sent it to a friend of mine, and she said, I'm a bit skeptical of this. And I did a bit more research, and I'm okay. I'm less convinced now. It's a very difficult topic to talk about because
For sure.
there's this account which is very like I say, harrowing to read, really. But I did some research, and I was expecting to find more stuff that I didn't know about Deepak Chopra, and more kind of like lawsuits and more evidence that this was was true and verified. At the bottom of the article, it says that they had looked into the diary entries and spoken to people, and everything remained consistent throughout the retelling of the story. There was a lawsuit quite a long time ago from someone, which was rejected by the courts, and Deepak Chopra actually went on to countersue for blackmail, and I don't actually know the outcome of that story, but that case, but it was quite a while ago. But it had gone on for many years. It was the thing is that was the only case I could find, and it feels like this might be a retelling of that story. It's anonymous, so I can't verify that. But I don't know. I was kind of torn.
So I think there's two. So I want to talk about the whistleblower industry that Lioness is a part of. To this specific story, I did some research too. Found that same article with the blackmail. There was a case where a female employee had sued him, but not a lot out there. That said, I don't know that that's evidence that this story is either not true or exaggerated. The way the story reads, they're not setting up necessarily that he was a predator out to abuse this woman who he had as a patient. Even in her retelling, they basically were saying that like they kind of developed this relationship over time. She'd be seeing him for an extended period of time, and yes, it was completely inappropriate, but it didn't sound like a pattern of behavior. And I see no reason to question the veracity of the story at all. I think I don't know if it puts him in the category of like Harvey Weinstein, repeat offender of something like this. In which case, yeah, you'd expect to see more similar stories coming out, especially once they start to break. Then others kind of come out of the, not out of the, I don't know. It emboldens other victims to come out. So potentially it was just a one-off. I don't think that puts the credibility of Lioness into question in any way.
Yeah.
I don't know. I read it slightly differently, actually. It definitely felt like it was the kind of thing that if he did it to one person, then he would do it to other people as well. Because the way it started off was that he would give this woman a hug after the end of every session, which was apparently fine. But then at some point he gave her a little hug and a kind of a kiss on the cheek. And then it kind of, the kiss got closer to her mouth, and then it was all very sort of almost calculated. And it was pretty horrible. And the thing is, I don't know. I don't know what to think now. I was initially very credible, but then when I didn't find too much else, I was like, I don't know. My friend is very skeptical. She follows Deepak Chopra. And I think what I wanted to do was go and find out one way or another for my friend to say, okay, because, I'm a researcher. I'm usually pretty good at finding some kind of indication one way or another, but there wasn't much else there.
Well, just because, the first person has come out and said something doesn't mean that there aren't others, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to prove a negative. But let's also remember this is an extremely touchy subject. It is. It's you cannot know, right? Especially if you were like, and then I found some court documents and he was implicated. Sure, that is totally an indication that something is wrong, but it was rejected, and as of right now, it stands at we don't know. This cannot be verified. Diaries or not, like.
But it doesn't. So, go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, sorry. I was going to say, one of the tough things about situations like this is that it's really hard for people to come forward in the first place.
Yeah.
So there's not a lot of evidence that exists to back up claims like this, and we saw with the whole Me Too and people like Harvey Weinstein and all the other assholes out there. It gets hidden and pushed under the carpet for such a long time until the first people come forward and actually start, So,
but I think that's
on the other hand,
balance. Like, I'm not ready to put him in that category, right? This story could be completely true, sounds completely true, almost certainly is completely true. It could have been a pattern of behavior. It could have been a one-off. And I don't think that matters. We don't have evidence to suggest either way. When I read through it, it didn't sound like she was one of many victims who he was doing this to. It sounded like an inappropriate relationship that developed over time. That was a bad situation for both of them. I do want to go back and talk about the whistleblower industry, though.
Sorry, me too.
I thought it was. I mean, first of all, I guess I didn't realize that there was a whistleblower industry. But the point they make is that they're a company who this is a company, Lioness.co is their website. They've got a blog that they post some of these articles to. But they talk about how it's important to coordinate the PR with the legal support in some of these stories to be able to have whistleblowers be able to come out safely and effectively to get this message out. And they cite a couple examples, like who's the NSA guy?
Edward
Snowden was like one of the first ones. And then they also talked about the Facebook leaker that we talked about not too long ago. Oh, Chelsea Manning, I think, was one. And who was the?
It was a woman. It was a data scientist.
Oh yeah.
Hagen.
Yeah.
So just about the coordinated effort, man, I'm a mess right now. Getting these things out safely, making sure the whistleblowers are protected. I thought that was really interesting that this exists as an industry.
There's a lot of money at stake actually as well, because some people. I've read a couple of stories about people who tried to blow the whistle and had what they thought was a story, so that they could get like there's some sort of federal amount of money that you can get if you blow the whistle, and then the court case happens, and you go through with it, and the company gets taken down in some way. And it's like a lot of money, $250,000.
It is a lot of money.
Whatever. So some people try and do it, and they're not successful. And there's one guy who was ruined his life because he claimed something and it turned out to be true, and he thought he was banking on getting that money. So I think it totally makes sense that it's an industry, but it is kind of surprising.
Yeah. Oh, Mike, you're muted.
I'm new to the internet. Sorry. I think with this specific company, where's Potty to remind me to turn my mic on? So with one thing that seems strange about this specific company, the article that we started with on protocol.com talks about how they get, half a dozen requests a day for people to tell stories, and they spend all this time researching and investigating and providing help, and their revenue model is based on getting referrals from law offices who they recommend their whistleblowers that they're working with to. But there's only a dozen stories that they've published over the past 2 years, and that was the thing that was kind of a disconnect for me.
It's only two people, right? I mean, it's
sure, but if they're getting half a dozen referrals a day, but they've only published 12 stories over 2 years,
it's probably like a strangling, like it's like a internet hug, so to speak. Like the hug of death. Like they're getting too much to go through. Maybe their bandwidth is limited.
If they want to do a good job and research these things thoroughly, then they're not going to have the capacity to verify, publish stuff that they know.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is a good sign. I think this is just an interesting situation. I'd quite like to learn more about it. And if I find out more, I'm going to follow it. Maybe get in touch with them and just ask them a few questions.
That's not a bad idea.
I wish the article did a better job of explaining what actually goes. I don't know. That's a big question I had. They talk about all this activity, all the work they're doing, but there's only 12 articles that I can find about them. And half of those are blogs about the business itself. So it just seemed like a disconnect. I would be curious to hear whatever you learn about that, Peter. We'll have to come back with a not so critical update.
Not so critical update.
Yeah. All right.